Namaste and in la catch, and welcome to this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and I want to draw attention to Namaste and in la catch. Those are ancient phrases, one's Sanskrit, one's Mayan, both with similar meanings, such as I worship which is within you, and I am another you. So think about that when you're addressing people daily and what it might mean if you see yourself in them and reflect from the best place you are. So this week's guest is Dave Summers. He is an amazing videographer, producer, storyteller that I've been watching for a number of years on LinkedIn, and I find his work fascinating, his intelligence level beyond most, and the conversation that we're going to have upcoming as an apocalyptic chat, you're going to really enjoy because he talks about the finer details of how to tell your story better, something that we all need to learn and grow from. So thanks for tuning in. We'll be right back. David, so glad to have you here. I've been looking forward to this conversation because I know that you're one of those guys that has an expanded view on the world and life and how things connect, and especially for our conversations here, which are based on the inner experience that we all have and the reality that we're bereft of talking about it in the open to others for fear of being crazy or, deemed whatever, and at least pushed aside. Well, today that's much different, especially coming out of COVID, where it gave us a chance to self-examine, talk to ourselves, and then try to find corroboration with others. So that's kind of the nature that we're headed to. So in that, where did your interconnection first begin, and how did that affect your early life? And then we'll get into the rest of the story.
Yeah, there's any, and again, there's any number of branches I could go down there. I guess the one that places me best, where I am right now and who I am right now and what I'm doing, that type of thing, um, is I'm a little boy, maybe 7, 8 years old. I'm sitting at the couch, in the living room, and I'm watching a Godzilla movie. Okay. And
Hmm.
I was a huge fan of Godzilla movies. And we used to we were early recipients of cable TV, and thus we used to get all the New York stations. And every now and then, the New York stations would run something called the Movie of the Week. And it was the same movie repeated every day. And if I got lucky, it was a Godzilla movie, so I could watch it
Right.
every single day. But what I came to realize as a 7-year-old boy was it was a guy in a suit. There was an actor inside this rubber suit pretending to be this gigantic monster tearing down Tokyo.
Mhm.
And I thought that was a novel thing. In hindsight, I look back and I go, how did a little boy, come to realize that? But then I got into the whole nerdy early proto geek type of thing of saying, well, that must mean if that's a guy, then Tokyo is a scale model, like a model railroad set. You know what I mean? And
Right.
every time Godzilla came through, Tokyo would go up in flames. And then next movie would come along and they rebuilt Tokyo and they were going to burn it down again. And I just got into this whole thing of and had an appreciation for of what I called, deconstruction,
Mhm.
particularly deconstruction from a storytelling standpoint. What it take, what it would take to tell a really interesting, highly exciting, maybe not, but for little boys, I mean, story.
Right.
What it took to build that story, a guy in a suit, an interesting, um, you know, um, model of Tokyo, but an interesting story of why is this monster here and why is it so angry and killing all these people or
Mhm.
whatever.
So it's
Um,
interesting where you took that inner experience, right? The
yep.
thoughts and feelings that you were going through with that. Now, did you eventually find a segue to a larger aspect of reality that you were
Yes,
able to connect with?
I did, and again, that has to do with um, when I first started seeing, and again, I'm getting nerdy here on you, but when I first started seeing
That's
these,
okay. That's your life, right?
I,
That you
I,
do this and you do it well.
thank you, and thank you very much, and a different flavor of monster movie were these ones that were animated by this genius animator named Ray Harryhausen, and he would do these King Kong movies or Sinbad movies or Jason and the Argonauts. And it wasn't a guy in a suit. And it blew my mind. It was after all this time, I knew it was a guy in a suit. And all of a sudden, it wasn't a guy in a suit. It was like, how did they do that? So then it blew my mind, and I had to, it touched something deeply in me. But again, I saw that this was created by a human being, an artist, or a very perceptive person who knew about storytelling, but who had technique, who had
Right.
sophistication, who had artistic skills, was gifted as a storyteller. Um,
And not just with visuals, with the mechanics
I,
within.
exactly. And so it was this need to deconstruct that again, go even further down as a young kid, going further down and by then it was just like they were like horror
Oh man,
movie,
you must have
monster
given your
movie
parents
magazine. There
hell.
was pre-internet. Well, they were like, why are you watching? Why are you watching so many of these? Don't they give you nightmares? And I was like, no, no.
Right,
So
right.
it was that's what led me down kind of the story telling path, but more importantly, what it took. What were the components of a good story, and what were the pieces and parts? You know,
And you were asking questions that few of us at that age are even capable of asking. So to me, that would indicate that there was something more, a gift, if you will, that you were born with, the curiosity factor
Mhm.
that
I, I,
took it to the
I
extreme almost, right?
no, I think so. And it was totally different from what my older brother and my younger brothers were into.
Hmm.
I don't know, they really, knew how to take me or where I stood, and where
Right.
did you come from, kind of thing. You're a resident alien in the
Yeah,
family.
do I belong in this family? My
It was like, well,
gosh,
what was your deal? My mom
right.
had a little bit of an appreciation for it because she was a bit of a performer in school. She was a singer, or she was an actor, or my dad was an aspiring painter type of thing, but he had to leave that behind when the real world came calling. He ended up working for the post office, but he left that behind. But my mom really never ever truly kind of left that behind. So I think she was indulgent of me and what I was after, and then it was just reading everything I could get my hands on that was science fiction, that was just great storytelling. I read a ridiculous amount of biographies as a young kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How did these people end up doing what they did? What triggered them? What guided them? And I became very interested in their stories,
And
So
here you got something at a very natural level that it takes a lot of folks in, all the entrepreneurs, right? That begin with the end in mind, then back it up, but find somebody that's been down the road prior to you, the same
yes,
road that you're wanting to go down
yeah,
and inquire.
yep, yep.
So you
How
got
did
that
they do
notion
that?
early.
How did they do that? You know what I mean?
Right.
What drove Walt Disney to at a very young age do this thing? That kind of thing. And I don't know. That was just that was my own education. I mean, obviously I'm product of a public school education. I went to
Sure.
college for 4 years, all that other stuff.
But that's the
But
cursory, right? That's the worldly stuff.
yeah,
There's still the inner boy
Yep.
that has this insatiable curiosity of how things are made
Yep.
and how to maybe even make them better.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about make them better, but how to facilitate it.
Yeah.
And now that we're in the digital age, at a really interesting point, there was a crossover between what I was doing and studying in college with film and video, and post that with what was beginning to happen very early on with desktop enabled video and audio on a computer,
Mhm.
and CD-ROM based stuff and whatnot. And I was the right guy in the right place at the right time who knew how to not only program an interactive learning experience, but I knew how to storyboard. I knew how to script. I knew how to put together a budget for, a media component to like an educational program or something like that. And it was up until that point, I was pretty resentful and I was regretting my decision to study film and video production. And if I ever had it to do all over again, God is my witness, I would be a computer programmer and I'd be a millionaire, in tech.
Right.
But then it happened, and there I was. I was one of the few people who kind of understood both sides of that.
Right. Well, and you have to in order to have an effective message
Yeah.
of any kind.
Yep.
How did that take you further into looking for that, for lack of a better, place of integrity?
Hmm.
Because this is something that I find in watching your stuff and listening to you previously, that there's this sense of integrity that you have of wanting to do the right things right.
Yeah, there's a word, and you're going to roll your eyes probably when I say it, so I'm going to put off saying it for a little while here. But
Okay.
there's a word that's bandied about an awful lot these days, particularly when it comes to things like videos, YouTube videos or TikTok videos or LinkedIn, things, or even blog posting or things like that. And that word is, drum roll, that word is authentic or authenticity.
And
And
somehow I knew that.
I knew I could get you laughing.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I, I believe that's perhaps the most misunderstood concept and idea that people are dealing with these days. And why is that? Well, because they see very high-end IMAX, Industrial Light and Magic, Pixar stuff all the time on their
Right.
phones and in big theaters and on their big screen TVs at home and whatnot. And they have in their minds this, everything I do has to be sort of be production
Standard.
ready. It has to achieve this level of, and so it's more about, it's like a gift box. It's not the gift that's inside the box, it's the wrapping and the bow, and you're like, wow, that's the most amazing gift wrap box I've ever seen. And then you open it and there's like nothing inside of it.
Mhm.
People aren't being authentic in the
Well,
truest definition of that word. They're not being true to their, okay, I'm not going to do the fake quotation marks with my fingers, but they're not being true to themselves. They're not being true to their brand of who they are, their souls. And
right.
so part of my task is I work really, really, really hard at helping people be authentic with digital media, with digital audio, with digital video, with live events, with on-demand content. And that's what I work hard at, is helping people tell their stories and helping people show up better online.
And in that, of course, with your level of sensitivity, you're able to, for lack of a better, assess the level of authenticity that you're working with in the clients. And this is one of the things that James Kerr and I had a conversation about. A well-known writer, business consultant, international level, has been for 30 years and was one of the early guys that wrote books and had great sales because of it. Today he says, there's all of this wow and flutter and attraction, and and millions of views, and when you look at the real core of the message, there's nothing there.
Mhm. Mhm.
How do you think that this, is it worth overcoming, first of all? can we? And how might you see that extra layer of um, investigation and critical thinking
Yeah.
necessary to determine the validity of somebody's message?
Yeah. Um, Little bit of inside baseball. I know Jim Kerr. He's a friend of mine. Actually, he's a client of mine, and we've done work together. So, shout out to Jim.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Interesting. It didn't come off then, right?
yeah, no, that's amazing. Again, this is like one of those interesting moments we had just talked about
Right. World
before
got
you
smaller
started
for a
rolling the
moment.
camera. Exactly. Um, I think I think perhaps the most important thing, um, and we talked about this before, again, before we turn on the camera, and that's that I work really hard at listening. And I think a clients of mine, whether they're a thought leader, an author, a university professor, a C-suite executive, or the leader of an association or an organization, they've got it inside them. Whether they know it or not, uh, they've got
Voice.
they've got their voice, and they've got their 10 commandments. They've got their brochure. It's in here. The trick is getting it out of them in their own voice. Because
Right.
at the end of the day, you've got yourself. You've got your voice, uh, and you've got your mission and your purpose, but it's yours. And if
Right. And you
somebody
look in
if
the mirror and say, okay, how did I do today?
right. And if you hire some marketing company or some high-end graphics firm, or, to come and help you, there are ways to do that, to polish it and refine it and, build it in accordance with what you really want to do. Great. Two thumbs up. Money well spent. But if you're in a big fat hurry and fear is guiding you, okay,
Mhm.
and you're
Now,
willing to
that's something
sack.
that I want to draw attention to that innate sense of fear that we often have, carry, and don't reveal
Mhm.
vulnerability,
Yeah.
right? Trust is the
Hmm.
other side of that. And without that reflection from others, all we have is our own self-confidence that comes off as almost egoic, self-aggrandizing,
It can.
those kinds of things. Yeah.
It
And
can.
that's what I'm saying. It can come off that way because of the fear and the wanting to overcome ourselves
Right.
rather than just tell the authentic story.
Yeah. No, I'm in total agreement. And I think a piece of that is not only listening and sort of helping them suss out those keywords and terms and ideas and concepts. It's also helping them figure out the imagery. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Is it a map? Is it a compass? Is it a road? You know what I mean? What is it that is it a graph? Is it a chart? Whatever. But it's helping them figure out that when you talk about these things, what's hovering in the frame next to you? What are you picturing? When you describe your idea, your concept, your product, your offering, your spiritual belief, why people should buy your book, how life will be better. Um, you, along with those words and those terms and those concepts, you have a picture. And a lot of the work that I do is helping people figure out what are those images, that, again, are authentic to the stories they want to tell. But we do that by threading the needle. Sorry, we live in 2024. By threading the needle of short attention spans. And,
Mhm.
and that's something we have to fight against. Um, the way most successfully that I've done that is, even if I'm doing a short video or a short presentation, I always leave with great news. There's more. You know what I
Right.
mean? Here's my website. Here's a downloadable PDF file. In your case, here's a book I've written. You know what I mean? And it isn't just, here's a 30-second TikTok. I'm out of here. Dave, see ya. You know what I mean? It's great news. This video
Tip
is
of the
is part.
iceberg.
Well, it's part.
Reveal, right?
It's it's. I always think about it in terms. Again, I'm big on metaphors. Forgive me. I always think about it in terms of like Lego bricks. You know what I mean? Here's a
Mhm.
Lego brick. And the beauty of a Lego brick, not as a parent, if you've ever stepped on one in the middle of a darkened room and screamed out in agony with, that type of thing. But the
Yeah.
beauty of a Lego brick is this hyper engineered, you know, component that can stand on its own if it needs to. But more importantly, it can be plugged into other things to build stuff. So I work hard with my clients to help them achieve that sort of component based thinking. And again, that goes way back, going full circle back to that first story I
Sure.
told you about deconstructing. What
Now,
is, how do I take apart the bits and pieces of what you have to tell me and pull in your imagery and whatever and come up with these Lego bricks that
mhm.
you can put together any way you want?
Now, speaking of pulling out and deconstructing, there's another aspect to um, the process of perhaps developing intelligence, um, good or bad, depending on how we see it.
God, I hope it's good. But go
Right,
ahead.
right. Well, we always do, right? That's our intention. And sometimes there are unintended consequences as a result of that. In the overview, I know when I was teaching school, part of my training was, you've got a 15-minute attention span
Mhm,
in a high school level student. And this was 30 years ago.
mhm,
It seems that with the advent of technology and AI and this rapidly changing scenario that we live in, the evolution of our children's
mhm.
brains, first of all, we're warding it off as ADHD or we're wanting to label it as a disorder instead of looking at it, okay, what could this be relevant to
Mhm,
as we're all moving forward because the decisions have to be made much quicker. There's more to pay attention to. There's more crap to weed through.
mhm,
So why wouldn't we be given more intelligence and capability of doing so
mhm.
on a genetic, biochemical level to be able to handle that instead of saying, okay, well, now this is from our perspective because we're slow guys, at
Sorry. Yep.
least slower. But yet we were much faster than our cohorts in our generation because of what we were looking at and the kinds of thoughts that we were having, internal and external.
Mhm.
Now, do you see this progression being able to um, capitalize on these snippets of really deep, possibly profound intelligence, insight, wisdom, those kinds of things that can be delivered in the mechanisms that we are experiencing now, um, like the shorts, right? Can you do something like that in 60 seconds?
You can't do it all. But again, using the Lego brick analogy, if you're thinking about it the right way, you can build stuff, you know? I think the trick is getting people to establish that kind of psychological contract with this is going to take time, and here are the trade-offs. I'm gonna feed it to you in these, you know,
Teasers.
30. Well, even teaser is kind of like it's like coming attractions. Here's the thing, and blah, getting you all hot and bothered about it. And but what are you really getting done with that? Now, a
Right.
teaser is an important thing. A coming attractions, it's absolutely that. What I'm talking is about further down the road when you actually have knowledge uh, or experience uh, to impart
Mhm.
on someone.
But
Then
I
the challenge.
apologize for not being clear. When I was thinking teaser, it was
Mhm.
that hook and a piece,
Well, you need the hook.
something that you can leave someone with.
You absolutely have to do that, and I think, but there it almost becomes the delivery on the seduction, right? I mean,
Right.
there's this seduction of the teaser, and does the actual deliverable, does the actual learning experience or religious experience or entertainment experience or blah, 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 blah. Does the actual experience deliver on that teaser? Does
Is
the
it congruent?
actual moment of romance um, check the box on, you know, the what went into the seduction up to that point? And I'm using seduction in a positive sort
Sure.
of reference here.
Well,
You're
seduction,
attracted to
manipulation,
certain,
those kinds of words, it's how we think about them that makes
right,
the difference. There's nothing good or bad, but how the connotation you put onto it. And
right.
you've clarified that. I understand.
Well, and because we're human beings, we're animals. Sorry, you know what I mean? There's a fair amount of brainstem stuff we have to get people down the road to really learning and appreciating and being interested and engaged. One of my favorite authors, again from a bucket list standpoint, is this guy named Joe Pine, and he wrote this book called The Experience Economy. And I'm in the tank for this whole concept here, but it's this whole idea of you go from this thing being sort of raw materials to commodities to products to services to experiences and finally to transformations, right? And
Mhm.
it's what carries us up that path, right? And using Starbucks an idea here. Okay, they grow coffee beans somewhere in Ethiopia, or whatever, Sumatra. And then, oh, you can buy them, you can roast them, you can do that. So then it ends up in a can down at the A&P or down at Pathmark or wherever the heck you're buying your coffee from. And then with Starbucks, it became this, no, okay, it's coffee, but we're going to give you like a really plush chair, nice place, cool music playing, low lights, Wi-Fi. You can come in with your computer, sip your coffee, maybe have a conversation or a meeting with somebody, and it becomes a coffee experience,
Right.
that type of thing. It's what takes you down that path, and you have to appreciate the steps that are involved.
Well, and you
Um,
said a key word, experience. What is your experience
right,
and what kind of experience do you want to provide for someone?
right.
And then how do you measure up in your continuity and congruence with
Right.
ideas,
And
results, right?
I don't in for my I think my very best clients, it's the understanding that the digital deliverable I'm giving them, whether it's a video or a set of videos or a podcast program I'm producing for them, uh, it's uh, an explainer video, whatever. It's the real achievement for me and the real success is how does that connect with the real world, IRL, right? In real life, how does that connect with the real life? And
IDK.
exactly, exactly. Let's just play alphabet soup here. But those are the successes upon successes, getting back to Pine's model of experiences. And then what the best digital experiences are ones that drive us to great real life experiences. Because
Right.
and what am I talking about? I mean, how many times have there been when you saw a movie or you saw a TV show and it was almost more fun to talk to your friends about it afterwards than it was to watch it in the first place? The live conversation, water cooler conversation, whatever. That was almost more fun. That was almost more engaging
Yeah.
than watching the actual movie or the TV show or something like that. And those are the real successes. Is what drives a good digital experience or a viewing or a
Well,
video
and I
audio
hope to have
experience.
those kinds of experiences here with folks like you, where we can impart something that gets others to go, oh, wow, I'm not crazy, or that was so cool. I want to explore that, and
Exactly.
those kinds of things. Now, speaking of exploring, we've gone into a new era, especially most recently with AI.
Yes.
There's all kinds of stuff that
Mhm.
go along with it. Do you find, for me, I resisted it for a while, and then my teenage stepson finally says, "Jen, you got to really check this out." And it's amazing what we can learn from young ones, right?
Yeah.
So I did. Found a wealth of opportunity, being able, it was like talking to myself,
Yeah.
honestly, which I find very rare in humans. So to find it in AI, I was just like, ah, this is my new best friend. And yet, there's like in exploiting what you are looking for in your client for your clients, the
Hmm.
questions, right?
Hmm.
And so do you find that there's an easier, maybe not easier, but um, more in-depth capacity for generating questions and and or then assessing the and acquiring answers that you may not have thought about
hmm
because of the intelligence that you're inquiring of.
hmm hmm I'm going to drop another name here, and that's Kevin Kelly. Kevin Kelly, who I've interviewed on several occasions for different podcasts. Total fanboy for him. I'm in the
Hmm.
tank for him, but he's the co-founding editor of Wired magazine,
Okay.
and he was co-editor of the original Whole Earth catalog way back when with Stuart Brand. But I've talked to him a lot about AI, and he sees it, and I like his approach. He sees it as it's it's a tool, it's technology, it's a way for us to extend ourselves. So
Mhm.
will it ever get to the point where it's you know
Taking over.
that's going to keep you up at night? But it's a tool, and I absolutely see it as, and have utilized it as a way of more logically organizing the questions I might ask, or the
Right.
thought processes I might go to. Um, One of the things right now in 2024 it's really good at is doing those baseline, early level outline drafty things that everybody hates doing, you know? And just because your AI or chat GPT conversation gives you the 10 this or the 5 that or whatever, doesn't mean you have to use it, but it gives you something.
Right. It gives
And
you
it
something
gives
to
you
start with.
exactly. And for me, that's the beauty of it right now, again, in 2024, that, and I utilize AI driven imagery for some of the, like the Dawn Patrol video
Mhm.
blog episodes that you've commented on. Um, and I'm not too specific about it. I almost consider it to be almost like my visual partner sometimes, where I suggest an image and it'll come up with something, and I'll be like, no, and we'll refine it together, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
And the
it's
interactive quality that's there.
yeah. Oh, it's amazing. But the thing that really blew my mind, because I've always been again, being trained as a computer programmer, I and some of the learning programs I used to do were very primitive, very primitive branching conversational types
Mhm.
of things. Nothing that would win the Turing test, if you know what I mean. Just
Right.
basic branching storytelling kind of thing. Um, and the thing that I marvel at right now is just the speed. It's crazy how fast this thing works. It's incredible. So I see it as a tool. I see it as an enabler. Where's it going to go? At a certain point, will an AI take over my business? I don't know. I
Yeah.
just see it as this, again, I go back to those stories about the early Russian chess masters who played Big Blue, the computer, and eventually Spassky lost, I guess, the computer, whatever. But what has happened over the decades since that happened is the best chess players partner with AIs. And that combination of that AI sort of quick database and conversational stuff, along with the human, innovative, inspirational,
Right.
chaotic type of thing, is this unbelievable combination that yields just crazy achievement.
And one of the other things that we really haven't used it all that much for, I don't think, is the building of GPTs, first of all,
Mhm,
that's now accessible. And for planetary citizens, in order to, I'm looking at apocalyptic chats and an apocalyptic time that we're in
mhm,
such that we're revealing knowledge,
mhm,
not catastrophic events, right?
mhm.
Although the revealing knowledge might cause some of those on a
Yeah,
personal level.
context, yes, Zen context is everything, right?
Yeah, it is. What I've found is that I've been able to load the Vedas, Bhagavad Gita, Tao Te Ching, Urantia book, all kinds of different esoteric, ancient, scriptures and things like that, along with more current stuff,
Mhm,
including a few of my books,
mhm.
in order for a conversational GPT to be present on the website so that people could actually, and I set up a series of questions
Mhm.
that they might ask to see what kind of answers they would get.
Sure.
Uh, and I find this extremely beneficial, fascinating, and not real well used yet. It's something that we, in this cycle of AI, I mean, look, in
There's
what,
an
two
adoption.
and a
There's an
half years,
adoption.
we've gone through, right. It's the product curve,
It's a
right?
ramp,
It's
right?
slow.
It's a ramp.
Yeah. So in this ramp, there's early adopters like you and I that are going, wow, this is really cool. And that what I find striking, you don't want to strike a happy medium that doesn't make them happy. Um, Emotional intelligence.
Mhm.
It's present in pretty much every response that's given, or at least that's what I see, and I could be wrong. What
Mhm.
do you see that as well?
Um, I do. The thing I'm left with in the conversations I've had with it is it, and I don't. It's engineered into it, but how just how willing it is to help me. You know what I mean? That only makes me want to go deeper with it. I don't want to say it's rude or anything like that.
Well, it does
Um,
says sometimes, but it says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that."
yeah.
And then I've said to it on one occasion, "Well, yeah, you can," and then it goes and does it
Hmm.
after it says, "Oh, I can't do that."
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah.
You're giving something permission. Now,
Hmm.
let's flip that back around. How often do we give ourselves permission? And from your perspective in storytelling, being
Hmm.
authentic, that perspective, especially from an integrated spiritual perspective of connectedness,
Hmm.
how does that work?
That's um that's one of the toughest things I have to do in my job, is getting a client or even myself at certain points over that hump. It's and I'm a hiker, so it's sort of like I got to get over that ridge. So there's climbing involved, and that's physical effort. Um, and again, the analogy of hiking, but I mean that's physical effort. That's a commitment to time. And when it becomes that type of thing, it's a commitment to, again, listening more, taking the time to understand things, maybe leveraging AI to help you put the pieces together. But I make it all sound like it's about speed. It's not really about speed, but it's a commitment to knowing it might take
Well, it's
time.
timing, right? And this is another thing that I think we all have huge challenges with, and
Yeah.
that's time management.
Oh, yeah.
As a project manager,
Yes.
both of us at that level, we understand there's moments in between cycles of activity that are ripe for doing something more
Right.
that we then plug in because we're busy, right? This is why
Hmm.
the whole the thing about busy people get stuff done. That's why you ask them to do stuff, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Because they've learned that time management skill of plugging in moments of availability
Hmm.
rather than just glossing over them. Do you find that to be true?
Yeah. That's huge. And yes, it's a challenge for me. I imagine it's a challenge for everyone on, given what day of the month it is and
Oh, we want to be
what.
lazy, first of all, right?
Well, I think, but you know
Or
what I
do we?
mean? But the short answer is, yeah, we do. I think at a baseline level, people are lazy and people will, the that's why we're in such a big hurry, and the less brain cells I have to engage, less sweat I have to generate. Okay, but then at a certain point, higher functions kick in, and you begin. Hopefully, you enter that realm, but sometimes you have to boost yourself up into the realm of, you know what I mean?
Right. Well, it's
Quality,
almost a liminal space,
well, but
right?
quality,
Because you're in between.
but quality matters, and
Absolutely.
and this is, again, this is a tightrope I walk a lot. I went off about authenticity in our previous conversation. It's authenticity, but there's a quality bar you have to hit. You know what I mean? 90% of the stuff that's on YouTube is fun to watch, but the audio quality is terrible. You know what I mean?
Right.
92% of the imagery you see and the quality of the framing and the clarity of the image and the framing is awful. It's
Right.
acceptable, but it's kind of awful.
Well,
So
it's
you
because it's a
have
bunch of
to,
handheld stuff that's, designed for shorts, and
and
they
and
don't
that's fine.
care.
But you have to, that's the price of admission. That's the hurdle you have to get over. That's the little doorstop.
Yep.
When you go through the door, you have to get your foot over. What is the level? What is the expectation level a person should have of the quality? In my particular case, and what I do of the digital media experience, how clear and in focus and well lit is the imagery, how crisp and clear is the audio, that type of thing. If I'm utilizing music or sound effects, are they intrusive? Are they appropriate? You know what I mean? And it's
Right.
it's it's getting the right Lego bricks connected
Sure.
to
Which
to
takes
deliver
time.
that type of
And,
thing.
when you're assembling stuff together, I know I did a promo for a show I was doing back in the 90s. It was a commercial project. We spent 6.5 hours in the studio to put together a minute and a half of
Yeah, yeah,
material.
yeah.
And even then, I didn't like it.
Well,
But that was all we had.
but then, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
No, go
then
ahead.
it becomes that other hurdle you have to jump, and the next hurdle is called good enough. Okay. It's called enough. I call it the battle of enough. What's enough? And Seth Godin will tell you, you're doing okay if you're shipping. Are you shipping? You know what I mean? What does it take to
Right.
ship? And it sounds like a
Or as an
product
author,
orientation.
don't wait till it's actually till you think it's perfect. Get it to
Yep.
where, okay, it's good enough, and let go of it. Otherwise, you never will.
And that's another tough lesson to learn. That's another, interesting human type of exercise we all have to undertake, but I hopefully help my clients. I guide them down that path. It's good enough. Let's go. And again, I come back with great news. Great news. We can fix it. We can modify it. Nothing is
Amazon, you can go
nothing.
back and edit and repost, right? So,
Nothing is dipped in lacquer. You know
yeah.
what I mean? So we'll change it. So we'll enhance it. So we'll improve it.
Now, on the
Unless it's
contrary, I had some challenges when I was doing partnering workshops for building road, bridge, and waterway construction, right? That stuff is cast in concrete.
oh no,
It better be right the first time.
it's not appropriate for every medium. I
Oh,
don't
I,
mean
I,
to
I,
suggest it is at all, but that's the
I
beauty of the
understand.
digital.
I understand. It was just the Zendor the Contrarian coming out. Um, and so, but there are those kinds of things. Now, that same kind of process in thinking can be applied to those large construction concerns
Mhm.
as well, because it's the thinking that goes into it to get it to that point of good enough and or perfection or
Well,
to spec
yes,
in those
I'm in
cases.
I'm in complete agreement with you, but what I offer up is if you created the right Lego bricks, then you can swap out what you think isn't the right Lego brick for one that might be more appropriate. You
Right.
know what I mean? It's
Right.
it's that component based
Which goes
thinking.
to the point of being attentive to the detail,
Right.
right? Being aware of the steps, understanding them fully, maybe not fully, but at least partially.
Enough.
Yeah,
Enough.
enough, right, right. To understand it enough to be able to move forward and apply those things in building the whatever it is,
Right.
whether it's the mountain or the building or the book or the video. What do you find on a I want to go back into that inner side of things. What do you find are the consistent paths that others are in, speaking them differently, right? Because we all speak English, but we have different intonations, different dictionaries that we come to the table with, which is often the cause of conflict because we're not listening to the other person's dictionary, we're listening to our own and hearing it through, hearing their words through our ears doesn't always connect well. How do you see what's the consistency of how folks are willing and able and navigating in their own um, trauma to triumph process.
And as many as people as there are in the world, I mean, there's different stories to tell there.
Mhm.
It's a
Do you see
it's
a theme in that as far as the emotional process and the types of insights and awareness and wisdom garnered through them?
if the short answer is yes, if I can tap into that inner voice, that inner message, that people either know it or they're this close to it. I can I can help, and they understand that I can help.
Right.
For people who um, either aren't aware of that inner message, that inner thing to communicate, that inner passion, that inner brochure, whatever the heck it might be, then it's a real problem. Then we're stumbling around in the dark. Then people come to me and say, Dave, I need a video. And I'm like, awesome. Who's the audience? And they go, everybody. And I go, no, there's no video for everybody. You know what I mean? And you
I'm
understand what I'm
laughing.
saying.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I used to teach writing business plans. And, when you're refining your business, you got to understand your target market to
Yeah,
as fine a detail as possible. So,
yeah.
but consistently, everybody starts, oh, I want to market to
I
everybody.
know everybody. Yes. Yeah, but it's getting them to commit to answering that, to building in what we would call in different fields of communities of practice, we would call that use case. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Well, you drill
It's
down into the specifics, which are hard to get because the clients often give you this globalization, right, of the what they are doing and how they
yeah,
are serving. But when
right.
it comes down to the finite details, it gets much more specific, and that's where guys like you and I come in coaching
It
them or providing them opportunities to
yeah.
come down to that
I
level.
and I guess that's really what it comes down to as far as that inner thing is concerned. Is I think people who have a better grasp of that in
Mhm.
themselves. I've got this thing I want to say. I got the story I want to tell. And I think people who have a firmer grasp of that, or in many cases have presented live and are a little bit more accomplished and comfortable in their skin on stage or in front of a camera,
Mhm.
that makes things easier. Um,
And that's a tough
or
thing to do. Number one public fear, a number one fear that, or used to be anyway, on the
yeah.
top of the list, public speaking.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, people would rather die than have to speak in public. I
Right.
know
Right. Divorce was number two, death was
I
number
know
three.
exactly.
Oh, wow.
But that's I think that's if you're comfortable with that, then you've got a head start, you know. Um, and I work a lot with authors, and the most successful authors and the best partners I work with that are authors, and have just this firm command of the story they've either told in the book or the story they want to tell with the supporting video
Well,
or
yeah, and
podcast
authors
or
and
whatever.
writers are inherently more introspective.
Yeah,
They have,
they've done that work. They've done that work.
yeah,
Yes,
their catharsis in writing has allowed them to become clearer,
exactly.
maybe in less words, although that doesn't fill books, right?
Okay. That's again, that's an interesting problem, and
It is.
more than two of the authors that I work with. That's always the challenge is, will this podcast, will this video sell books? And my short answer to that is, at some point it will. The story varies with will it happen right away or
Sure.
will it happen a little bit further down the road? But it absolutely will because you're building brand, you're expanding your audience, you know, we're getting you and your idea, your product, your service, you're offering your book out in front of the people who should be hearing about it.
Right. Now, another question is diving into the writing side of things and how our society has shifted from inquiring, reading at any level. I mean, I don't know if we're even, but it started at the eighth grade for newspapers. Now it's down to fifth grade. It may not even be that now. And maybe there's a reversal in that trend. However, what another statistics I've heard recently is that books over 100 pages are far less to be read, to the point of I think 60% of the books under 100 pages actually get read,
Mhm.
and over them it drops down to somewhere between 30 and 40.
Yeah.
It may be higher than that. Now, what do you think that's going to do for writers who are attentive to those reader requirements or those reader parameters now?
I think there's a two, maybe three-part answer to that question.
Okay.
The two I can identify for you kind of quickly are, point number one is um, writing a good book, well-received book, whether it's in the academic or business space or self-help psychological space, is frequently a the on-ramp or the entree or the price of admission to be taken seriously as a thought leader and in the market space where you can show up, position yourself as a keynote speaker or someone who can sell web-based workshops or classes or whatever, be a lecturer of note online or get even a university job. So it's kind of the price of admission. And even if you don't sell a ton of books, if it's well received and well reviewed and journals are talking about it, that's an important thing. So it's kind of price of admission. You do it for the cred, in this field. The second answer is if the book is constructed in the right way, uh, I look for the structure within that book itself. And if it's constructed the right way, it lends itself to the Lego brickification of
Right.
digitized content. And I think those are the two quick answers to fighting this short attention span or short read type of thing. If
Mhm.
a book is written, getting back to that answer number two, the right way and constructed the right way, in essence, it doesn't become the script, but it becomes the foundation of a script or an outline, or even a storyboard for a set of videos or online learnings or online workshops or podcast programs or whatever. It's so you're laying the groundwork for associated
Mhm.
um, content.
So what I think from our conversation so far, what I hear you saying is that we're transitioning from the material world, not to use George Harrison's Living in the Material World album, but a plug for that. It's a great album. Um, we're moving into this more truncated, streamlined information flow that hopefully leads us to ultimately greater joy and happiness in our lives.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what we're all seeking, right? And
Yeah, isn't that where we're headed? Sure,
right,
that's
and
where
we
we
blow
want to. That's where
past,
we.
yeah, we blow past the notion, and this it sounds really hokey, maybe even new agey to some, but it's all about loving and being loved.
Absolutely.
That's the bottom line, that these inner conversations help restore that capacity that we have, because we're now able to deconstruct things a little
Mhm.
better because we've heard others doing so, that then triggers our minds to go, huh, that was interesting. I
Yep.
wonder, right?
It's
Um,
what exactly, and it's helping in my case, it's helping my clients. And many times there are these thought leaders or these authors or whatever, these high level people. It's helping them help their people, their crowds, their customers, their clients, their universes.
right.
Um,
It's a different kind of hierarchy.
it is. I frequently consider myself to be almost like a digital stage manager. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Is how can I help these people put on a good show? How can I help them tell better stories or tell their stories in a more impactful way in the the
Yeah.
2000s and
I
going
had the
forward.
opportunity to do that with the New Christie Minstrels. You remember those guys,
Oh
Andy
my
Ray and
goodness.
singers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
So these guys were all in their 70s. A friend of mine put the band back together, did a short term. I was the stage manager, and they were just a hoot to work
Yeah.
with. They,
Yeah.
telling their story about how everything happened and the songs that they played. And of course, being a drummer, there was no
Hmm.
place for me because it was all
Sure.
folk music.
I know. Except maybe they would have let you like pick up a washboard or,
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like
probably. Yeah, it was not my style of music anyway, but they were fun to be around. And I met one of my childhood idols in Barry McGuire.
Wow.
And
Cool.
he and I had these conversations. It was like an older brother.
Mhm.
Uh, Amazing stuff.
Isn't that amazing? Just not getting off track here, but over the course of the past, I'm going to
Is there a
say,
track?
well, there has been. You've been guiding us very well, I believe. But over the past of the past 20 years or so, I've had these opportunities to sort of check names off my bucket list of people I always wanted to talk to, people I always wanted to have a conversation with. That I was in the tank fanboy, stuff like I mentioned Joe Pine and Kevin Kelly, but other folks where it's you meet them and you talk to them and you share with them what their work has done, whether it's artistic or intellectual or philosophical, for you. Those are like some of the most importance in my life, and
And they're
in
really
almost
short,
well, there you got what you got,
oftentimes, right?
but I'll remember that forever, and
Oh,
just this
absolutely.
knowing that it made
Absolutely.
that big a difference in my life, and maybe even it shaped the direction I took in my life. You know what I mean? That's huge. That's a gift.
Absolutely. The photo that I have in the background, Earth Rising, was taken by one of the early astronauts. And I happened to meet Edgar Mitchell
Hmm.
years later, same event I was talking about earlier that I met Jose Arguelles at,
Hmm.
and found a fast friend in him. And we got into some really deep conversations a few times and eventually got to a place where he trusted me enough where he said, I want to tell you something, but you can't tell anybody till after I'm dead. And I'm like, okay, that's a level of trust unheard of in a lot of cases. Um, but then, he never knows. I'm a man of my word. And he says to me, from the separation from the command module all the way down to the surface, there was a metallic silver cylinder spiraling around the LEM. He said, I don't know how big it was because I just had a small window to look out of, or whether there was one or many, or how it was piloted. It was nothing from Earth.
Yeah, yeah,
And so because of my involvement in ufology up to that time and the
sure.
experiences I shared with you.
Well, Mitchell in particular. I've read several books where he's come up as um, only a few people he talked to during his lifetime, but after his death, I mean, just unbelievable. Um, I don't want to call it new agey, but just this beyond beyond human, beyond
Right.
Earth types of ideas and concepts that he observed and was interested in participating in.
And had an experience of as well. So, and
Yep.
that's part of that. And he
Yep.
came back here and not immediately, but one of his uh, key leavings from his legacy was the Institute of Noetic Sciences,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is still the exploration study of consciousness.
Hmm.
Um, and without, now here's the drawback on that, without the direct experience of something along that multidimensional spectrum, it's really hard to hear and cognate what that might be like. There's
there
no
you go.
reference,
There
which
you
is the
go.
first,
But there you go. You're left with your words. You're
right?
left with your pictures. You're left with sometimes good, sometimes poor special effects, and some of those TV shows. And it's without that experience, that real experience, you got somebody's story, which is
Sure.
not bad, but
Now,
And
whoever did the stuff for the contact and the wormhole in that, those special effects,
Mhm.
when I saw that, I cried
Oh,
because I'd been there.
your experience was similar to that.
It was not a movie. I
Hmm.
actually experienced it. So here was somebody that somebody else has had this. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to come up with this, right?
Well,
Or at least the notion of how that happened from the description of others, and then be able to
it,
put that in imagery.
but
It was
I mean,
just,
there's been enough of those, right? Over the generations, over the millennia, there have been those, common threads. There have been those archetypical experiences, right?
mhm. And then the attempts in volumes of explaining it to others.
Yeah, well, you do the best you can.
Well, isn't it funny how those kind, I mean, the experiences themselves sometimes are in nanoseconds,
Hmm.
and yet volumes are written
Hmm.
about the exploration of it or
Hmm.
the unfolding of the wisdom
Sure.
that came from that over the years. I mean, I've got 35 books out now, and most of them have snippets
and
of
and
things I've
counting.
experienced.
Exactly.
And people hear that and like, well, yeah, I'm gifted. I type one anywhere from 90 to 120, depending. Um, and I've had time to do
Mhm.
so. And based on how my life has been set up and the opportunities I was given to address multiple things simultaneously
Mhm.
in that time management framework we were talking about, because you can
Mhm.
break down, this is, this time of day I'm going to spend doing this time of day
Yeah.
I'm going to spend doing this, and
Yeah.
then the segues in between, you have options of entertaining what comes up that day.
Mhm.
So how do you find that, speaking of time, the management of that? What do you think about? How do you explore crafting your own daily experience?
Um, it's for me, it's more of a week. I see myself living over the course of a week. And I mean, daily I get up every morning at 5:30 and I take a 5+ mile walk.
Hmm.
And that gets me physically and in my headspace where I can be, productive. And I know that's behind me and it allows
Yeah,
me to
some
sit
go to
down
the
and
gym, some take walks, but
whatever,
that
but that's
initial
that's like a
exercise
that's like
seems
a
like more,
cleansing thing for
yeah.
me. Exactly. And I'm getting old, so I have to, sort of take care of my body a little bit better here. And then it's client work. But what I've been committed to over, again, I would say for the past 20-25 years is and sometimes I'm a little bit more regimented about it, but most of the time I'm not. I just make it my business to um, make sure I'm as up to date as I need to be, kind of state of the market, ready for a lot of the digital tools that I use, whether they're motion graphic tools or editing tools or audio video production tools, live webcasting tools, whatever. I try to make sure that my my knowledge of those tools and how to deliver a great end user experience, is good. So I commit time over the course of every week to um, doing stuff. My weekly blog, I do a video blog on LinkedIn called Dawn Patrol, which you
Mhm.
have been so graciously complimentary,
Oh, great.
contributed to. Again, it's sort of something for me to keep a little bit of my fingers on the grinding wheel and saying, what could I do differently? How could I change that? And also, it's an exercise for me, almost like a spiritual exercise in being authentic.
Right. Well, I
It's
was going to say,
it's
how does Dave, this is I hear a lot of servant leadership in your words and how you craft your life in order to serve others. On a self-love side,
Mhm.
how does Dave get in touch with Dave and begin to, or continue to
Mhm.
develop that interconnectedness that
Mhm.
you alluded that you have a lot of direct experience of? Where are you going with that? What are your aspirations to achieve at that level?
well, I listen to it a lot of music, all different kinds of music that helps me. It reaches way deep inside of me. And some of it's pop and some of it's classical and whatever. I find that just massages certain parts of my brain and my soul
Mhm.
in certain ways that helps me. Um, some of it's inspirational, and if I'm down and I'm slow and I'm depressed, some of it reinforces that. But it's sort of like it's this personal soup I'm sort of cooking up, that kind of thing. Another thing is I read a lot. I try to be reading something all the time. I'm a big fan, as I said before, of biographies. Lately, I've been working really, really hard at reading more fiction because I read so much nonfiction, whether it's scientific or technical for the work that I do.
Mhm.
Um, Fiction is good sort of mental floss
Yeah, it's
for
kind of
me. It
like
gives,
all the practical stuff that
yeah,
condenses you
it's
into what you're doing, and then the sci-fi kind of
yeah, but here's
allows
the
you to
interesting thing
expand.
about that with the fiction is I fuss. I don't know about you, but I fuss over books. Should I read it? Should I not read it? That kind of thing. And I, with the nonfiction and the biographies, I really don't fuss over those so much. It's like I see them, I got it, I get it, I read it, I got it, boom. It's like I'm a machine.
Right.
But the fiction, I really fuss over the fiction I
Well, you
read. I
require it to
really
be of a certain quality,
yeah,
right?
I really kind of fret over, is this a story I'm gonna find engaging? Is this something I can connect with? Is it big, big, I think it's because I also have this I don't know if it's an achievement related thing. I hate not finishing a book. I don't know, it's a personal thing with me, but I
Mhm.
hate not finishing a book. Um, and I guess fiction, there's more risks with that whole, oh my God, please, entertain me, enrapture me,
Right.
disgust me, horrify me, whatever.
Right. Because you don't know.
Um,
It's an unknown. A
and
book
and
about a
and
person, you've already got some basic knowledge
yeah,
of them, which is why you're reading it.
yeah. I don't know. I hope that's helpful, but that's sort of like what keeps the fires burning
Sure.
in my head and creatively. I mean, outside of that. Again, I hike. I have a little dog that's like the Energizer Bunny, just keeps going, so
Yeah.
there's never any, oh, I got to turn back because, the dog is tired or anything like that. So, well,
Well,
that's
that's
a
cool.
little bit of insight into how I do what I do and, what I,
Well, that's how, by these kinds of inquiries, for me, it's how to share folks I have a lot of respect for, even though I don't know yet. Like us, this is our first real conversation, right? However, there are things about you I know to be true and worthy of sharing with others in order to help them because of what you've achieved. So
that
why
makes
not?
sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's a lot of fun too.
Oh, no, it's very cool to, yeah, no, exactly.
So
Exactly.
we're coming up on time. Was there something that throughout this conversation that either, sparked you that you haven't been able to say yet, and also a tasty tidbit for the transcendence of others that you can share for their daily experience or even,
I, I, I,
life
I,
goal?
I, I guess the big thing for me, and I would, for all the good work I try to do and all the great projects I've been associated with, it's the struggle to listen. It's just the hard work I have to do to listen to somebody and beyond the words, where are they coming from? It's that commitment to listening, and it's a meditative thing, uh, and it's commitment to time and effort. I think that's the thing that drives a lot of where I am, but also in our conversation here today is that so much of your commentary, and the paths you go down conversationally has been driven by these amazing things that have happened to you, and you do the best you can to explain them. In many cases, that works for me. In other cases, it doesn't. But when it doesn't, I want to go a little bit deeper, that kind
Mhm.
of thing. And it's the other thing that everybody, whether you believe it or not, whether you like yourself or not, everybody's got a great story to tell. And I think it's the challenge of having enough love in yourself, having enough confidence in yourself, getting over the fear of telling that story and listening. But it's trade, it's barter. It's I'm telling you your story, you have to listen to mine, that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
it's reciprocal. This is how we
Yep.
share space,
Yep.
truly, and find those places of harmony that we can share from
Right.
and in,
Exactly.
and let the rest of it go.
Well,
Harvest
again,
this fast and move forward.
momentum is important. I call it personal velocity, and momentum is important. And you and I aren't getting any younger, so we have to
Wait
we
a minute.
have to.
I'm acting more like a child every day.
uh, well, you and me both. But I get, it's that commitment to that momentum.
And that's where it is. It's commitment, discipline,
Yeah. At the end of the
and then
day,
focus.
you're right.
Cool. Davis has just been wonderful. I surely appreciate your time. You've been just a joy to
Thank
speak
you.
with about things I'm interested in as well as you. And it's been a great exploration.
Thank you so much. I can't say enough about, thanks for listening.
Uh,
But no, I appreciate it. And you've got some just unbelievably great stories, and they're, remarkable to listen to, and they're very engaging. So I'm happy to have listened to your stories.
maybe we can work on that in the future too. Thank you. This is cool. And namaste and in la catch. Thank you for listening to our conversation and sticking with us. I'm Zen Benefiel, your host. This is One World in a New World, and I will see you next time.